my darling friend. I am remiss in my regularity, but at this juncture I'm afraid it cannot be helped. Harvest season is ever a busy time, regardless of which time you might live. I have wished for some time to write to you of my late summer inspiration, and now finally have managed to put pen to paper. I found myself, as August progressed, steadily more and more entranced by the great beauty I found blossoming along seemingly every roadside. A decadent color combination of bright chicory and delicate Queen Anne's lace, and I was utterly bewitched by it. So much so I found myself longing to be encased by those gentle colors, and, of course, why not? I knew first off that I would need lace, lots of it, and in a soft cream color. You know both my aversion to machine-made lace, suffocating polyesters, and making dreaded ruffles. So I can well imagine your surprise in seeing my use all three such devils in one illustrious petticoat-style skirt. But it was a vision in my head that, remarkably, turned out just so. For the chicory skirt pattern I used an old favorite that I've probably made 50 times over, and that's hardly an exaggeration. It has such flow and shape I use it almost constantly for my dancers. Again, I found myself drawn to lace and flower motifs for obvious reasons, and decided to double the amount of pointed panels I typically use in the skirt pattern, because fluff. I wanted something that would float on the wind, and when one sits it would envelop one's legs in a poof of flower petal-esque sumptuousness. The bodice pattern is from a French 1940s blouse pattern laid down by the excellent Mrs. Depew. I've enclosed her address below for your convenience. While I confess some amusement at reading the pattern marking in my limited French, I find her patterns fairly straightforward in the following and the makeup, and I was rather pleased with the results in general. The yards and yards of ruffles for my petticoat, while less pleasing, also led to a good deal of amusement once I cut down the lace and laid out the long trails to be gathered and basted. The front room of my home rather looked like a large spider of Ungoliant-ish size might have taken up residence. Rather a chilling thought. I cut and sewed 3 layers of the petticoat, the bottommost layer being made of muslin so I wouldn't end up getting lace imprints on my thighs when I sit wearing this petticoat. Not that anyone would see, but I would know they were there. This petticoat, as it turns out, is quite warm and shall make an excellent addition to my wardrobe for the coming cold. Yes, winter is coming. In any case, whilst keeping company with Mr. Robert Louis Stevenson, I pieced together my own chicory and Queen Anne's lace gown. I did actually put a zipper into the bodice, another aversion of mine, as you know my distinct preference for Victorian closures. And I couldn't help but be diverted as I thought of the history of zippers. Have I told you this story? Once upon a time, I'd fallen down a research side quest, a shock to your senses, I know. So, the illustrious Elias Howe actually invented the prototype zipper. We all know and love him for inventing the sewing machine, and I always recall his name because of many an afternoon spent watching Ye Olde Schoolhouse Rock. His wasn't much like a modern zipper, more like a series of hooks, but still roughly the same idea. In fact, zippers didn't actually catch on in mainstream fashion until a bit of genius advertising in the 1930s. Not the least of which was inventing problems that needed to be solved, such as gaposis and the apparent peeping and public humiliation it brings, or suggesting that men may find themselves exposed and in disarray using the old button fly system rather than the more convenient zipper fly. The reason which amused me most, however, was inventing and marketing on moral outrage. There was an invented implication that a zipper in a woman's dress made it easy for her to get it on and off, and thus made her easy. That is, in fact, why zippers were put in side seams in women's clothes very often in the 1940s, so they were hidden and thus less obviously morally objectionable. I find it very interesting that the public responded to this idea with clamoring interest in zippers, and I'm sure stuck with them because they are rather convenient. Moral outrage sells, my friend. Never forget that. In fact, the idea of zippers being sexy worked its way into high fashion. There was even a music video produced with the ideation of women as sexy zippers. Also, we'll just blithely ignore the fact that there aren't side zippers in men's clothing from the same era, and that zip flies really skyrocketed in men's fashion after the Duke of Windsor began sporting them when he abdicated the throne and went jaunting off into the sunset with his scandalous mistress. So, there you have it. Your zipper's existence and placement can apparently say more about your morals than you knew. or more practically can help you date extant garments given their placement prominence, physical makeup, and color. I mostly only hate zippers because I find them annoying to sew into place. Hand sewing buttons and the like is always a good deal neater, quite simply because it is what I've practiced more often, because I'm a masochist. I mean, mantua maker. I did suit my own fancy and add buttons with hand-crocheted loops up the skirt closure, so fear not, my hand-sewing ways are never far off. Seams were mostly finished via pinking because I absolutely could not be bothered, though the waistband is actually finished off fairly proper and also hides a sturdy elastic for maximum comfort. I found I really could have shrunk the waist on my petticoat, which is actually a nice problem. I embroidered in the hooks and eyes far too late into the night because when I get tired, I descend more and more into servitude to my aesthetic taste, as the sensible, settling part of my brain is the first to sleep. I woke up rather early next morn, 6-ish actually, which I know will put you into astonishment. I did my best to put in victory rolls and paint on 1940s inspired makeup, although I was not giving great detail to accuracy since this dress is mostly 40s inspired rather than dictated. The goal was to turn into a flower, after all. That particular day, the rain had other ideas, and the pretty morning light I rose so dutifully to pursue was soon fizzled. Foiled, I took a cat nap, and I went to a local nature center in the afternoon. Whilst being gobbled by mosquitoes, I managed a few decent shots, I think. So all is well that ends well, right? And now that it is mid-autumn, I finally send you your long overdue late summer letter. Que sera, sera. Farewell, wherever you may fare. Affectionately yours, FF.